first Marvel vs. DC episode in a long time, and it's an absolute banger. Maybe we really needed that break. Now, if I had a nickel for every time a Versus show featured a Clark Kent going up against a black and red abomination with a surprisingly wholesome ending despite everything, I would have 2 celestial bodies, much like Vodov here. Alright, you know the deal, like and subscribe, comment your favorite part of the episode, let's go! I adore the vibe of Sentry's whole breakdown. From the bright and cheerful, almost Incredibles meets Super Friends type of vibe between the music and the visuals, the great narrative to get into Sentry's character, the straightforwardly comic booky way they use to convey information, it's great, just great. And the humor showcases something a lot of Death Battle breakdowns don't quite achieve, the concept of less is more. Instead of Wits going up on a long and tiring tangent about how butterflies cannot physically sneeze, we just get him saying no, as if to say that's not science but let's move on anyway, you know, which would harm the pacing of the breakdown quite a bit. It's a subtle marker of quality, but it's there. Then we get deeper into Sentry's powers, we get this 2000 superhero movie-esque style of triumphant music to emphasize the sheer epicness of his power set, and we get the flawless usage of better known Marvel characters to emphasize the sheer craziness of Sentry's sheer brains and brawn, and can I just say, I don't think all of this would have hit as much without the Marvel vs. DC break we've had. This was a well-deserved break, and man, everything hearing this about these characters just felt fresh and new again. I love it. But then the power scaling half ends and we nosedive straight into character study stuff. The very breakdown glitches as if it was retconned by the void in front of our eyes, and things get dragged back into reality, oh there goes gravity, in a way that makes you say, oh, so the movie wasn't an edgy remake, it was rather spot on. So the music gets fittingly creepy and suspenseful, even more so as you get into Void's origins as an angel of death, and as I write this breakdown I just realized this shift is literally what Superboy Prime saw comic books turn into. Goofy and silly then, dark and edgy after. It's low-key insane how perfect this matchup is for both characters the more I think about it. And as much as I love the cinematic swelling music we get while hearing about Sentry's sacrifice, or the small spotlight Norman Osborn gets for how hilariously out of his depth he is for trying to manipulate, well, everything we just heard about the Void, this is where we get a small blunder in Sentry's analysis. It's a personal nitpick, but the way they introduce Molecule Man doesn't hit as much. It's done as if we just finished going over what Molecule Man can do, or as if we expected to know who that is, as if his immediate name drop should clue us in about his level of power, but instead his name is used to catch your attention before we get into why it should be impressive to scale to him. It's a small hiccup in an otherwise amazing flawless breakdown, so hey, I'm grasping at straws here. I love how ominous the last line feels, like normally the words gone but never forgotten but not forgotten are meant to be, you know, hopeful, thoughtful, honoring someone who is no longer with us, leaving a positive impact, yet considering what Sentry existing is a package deal that includes the Void, never be forgotten again includes almost sounds like a promise for something that doesn't want to be contained anymore, and I love that it works both ways. And the end segment does a great job at conveying just how much Sentry's defeat cannot come from physical strength alone, which understandably will make you think most opponents that aren't Superboy Prime would be thoroughly screwed here. Unfortunately for him, his opponent is a Superboy Prime. Something I noticed with the recent DC breakdowns is how much they want to tap into that classic goofier era of the franchise, but in this case it's a perfect framing device to introduce Superboy Prime, even if a tad confusing at first with the whole Ed Prime bit. No joke, I generally thought this breakdown is an amazing way to introduce Superboy Prime to newcomers, from how I saw the comic book landscape change without him time and time again, how he was left behind, how we're basically shown L3 Alexander Luthor manipulating Prime with a combination of visuals and Wheat's narration, and an impeccable name drop to boot, plus the usage of Young Justice Superboy to ground newer fans into something familiar, and the appropriate emphasis onto the whole Infinity thingy so that it's not confusing at all when it pops up into the fight animation. Superb, amazing, no notes, love it. After a relatively well-deserved cell phone about how much us nerds lose our minds when it comes to power scaling, I mean, that's what I centered my channel about basically, we get to the power set side of things, and yeah, they barely try to hide how much higher Superboy Prime scales over Sentry by most fair metrics, and how many counters it comes with to match the void. It's neither here nor there for me, but maybe keeping it a bit more vague to keep you guessing would have been nice. I swear I'm not saying this just because I used all my copy on my prediction video to root for Sentry. You could say there's a bit of a jarring shift between the fittingly somber "he murdered the original Superman," Golden Age Superman, Action Comics #1 Superman, followed by "but now he wants to be a hero, believing he could fly." And I'd say, low-key, that's pretty accurate to how comic book character progression can get sometimes. I mean, we're literally getting Norman Osborn becoming Spider-Man, so... But I feel like they hit the ground running again once we get to the Dark Knight section, plus him returning home to his family. And the bookends, and ending the analysis on a bookend is always a big plus for me. Oh my god, look, it's Lego Sentry and Void. Oh my god, it's so adorable, look at them. The fight starts with a pretty straightforward superhero brawl between two flying bricks, with a nice enough job of differing personalities at work here. You know, almost as if to compensate for the simple beginning. Sentry is the straightforward serious hero that announces parts of himself like a superhero toy commercial, whereas Prime is the quirky fourth wall breaker that just sees this as an obligatory to fight a bit but then they become buddies superhero fight, typical of crossovers. For a relatively simple clash of powers given their bullshit abilities, the cinematography honestly makes up for it too in a very visually engaging way, like you feel that these two are going at it. I really love the brief moment of Sentry glitching out after the first retcon punch. He looks so adorably lost and I feel so sorry for him throughout this whole thing. I get the feeling that the Sentry we saw before this had no recollection of the void, and he now, with the first retcon punch, remembers everything in one swoop. Must not be great. That can't be good. Hence his dire warning shortly after. After being hit stronger than a locomotive and clashing with Prime faster than a speeding bullet, the two seem to be dead even in strength. Until this happens.
I'll kill you to death! Bye-bye, Bob. It's time to play God.
Quirky callback followed by one of the best and gnarliest looking transformations in the show history, my god. The voice actor for Sentry/Void, yes they are the same person, aka Philip Sacramento, aka Lich King from season 9, delivers an amazing performance regardless of the number of lines he's been given. This is something I think this episode excels at in pretty much all aspects. They excel at less is more. They manage to do a lot with little, and that takes talent, passion and artwork. Returning to Philip Sacramento performance, the serious hero attitude, the desperation in not wanting to awake the void, the Oscar-worthy scream of pure agony as Void tears him apart like a springlock suit, the somberness of merged Sentry, and the way Void just says "bye bye Bob," not in a bored or stoic way, but in a pure evil say this motherfucker that couldn't be happier that his pure-hearted self was taken out of the picture and he can now play God. Which, funnily enough, is also a quote for comic book Sentry, right before fighting the Hulk. I love that all of this happens simply because Prime just had to murder someone desperately begging him to stop, resulting in the deaths of, I don't know, everyone on Earth and the universe around them. But then he manages to fix everything with the lessons acquired by his post-redemption self. Is it morally disgusting and irresponsible given that Prime literally needed a reset button to fix this mistake? Yes. Is it also 200% in character for Superboy Prime? Yes. In case this rotoscoping marvel seems familiar to you, that's because the man behind it is no other than Mr. Room vs. Omori himself, aka Levitation. who worked on this section of the fight, introducing a whole new animation style in the show in a visually amazing and memorable fashion. Honestly, Levitation deserves to work on a show for the amazing work he's done in his Why It's Perfect series alone. It's just awesome and inspiring to see, and it really motivates me to maybe put some time aside to hone my animation skills and post something so that that bell might take notice in me too, perhaps, maybe. I don't know. On the topic of combining animation styles, Void decides to sandwich Prime between Earth and Mars, aka the twin planets, one devoid of life, the other full of it, like Sentry and Void. I don't know if this was intentional, but I love it regardless. Sentry goes from bench pressing planets to breaking the bounds of infinity in a fittingly visually abstract way, even if I was a bit lost at first. But then I realized it fully makes sense. Yeah, the jump of scale from city to planetary to concept breaking may be a bit quick for some. For me, it's reminiscent of the one issue I had with Simon vs. Kyle, which again was the pacing and the escalation, but it leads to the terrifying visuals that not even infinite speed is enough to escape the void, as it literally corrals the damn thing into yet another visual highlight for the show's history. So I guess it balances out. Imagine flying away from something so fast that you break infinity and you see something catching up to you, bleeding the damn thing into pitch black darkness as if it was something corrupting, infecting reality itself. Easily top 5 scariest moments in Death Bell history, I don't care. Maybe I could do that as an actual video for Halloween. I don't know, guys. I have so many Death Bell idea videos and so little time. Let's see what I can manage to do in this summer now that I'm finished with the exams. I love how the battle itself goes from lighthearted cape shit to psychological horror almost, which if you count the breakdowns for each character, this is the 3rd time we see that shift in this episode, and I love it. It's as if this episode was made from my narrative team's loving ass. I love the Void hinting at Prime's canonical fear of the dark, his lighting reveal, the pure struggle and intensity of Prime breaking free from the infinite tendrils as Void just casually regenerates, showcasing how nothing physical is gonna put him down, not even Prime. But hey, it's Sean Chiplock being shrouded in darkness with a dark figure preaching poetry is not new to him, so he breaks out anyway. Props to Philly Sacramento for technically voicing 3 characters and being distinct in all of them, once again. Yes, I realized that I added this into the script, but it's fully warranted praise. Yeah, I'm still disappointed the track name isn't Identity Crisis, but honestly the explanation for why it's called Miracle Man works so well that it might just be the next best thing. According to the wiki, quote, it basically refers to how both Superman-like fellas are able to perform basically miracles with their powers, specifically name-dropping Miracle Man, a 85 character considered to be one of the first deconstructions of the Superman archetype. And the ownership for this character kinda flip-flop between Marvel and DC, so it technically counts as a precursor to both Prime and Sentry. So that's a big title and explanation in mind, really cool trivia there. But when it comes to being accompanied by the sheer artistry of the Void performing his own retcon punch, seemingly sending psychological ripples across the multiverse, yeah, I'm sorry, I still like Identity Crisis more. Now, the track itself, it starts off a bit generic, but it makes sense for this section since it's basically a typical straightforward superhero brawl, which is meant to be subverted later. It sounds heroic and action-packed, with the slightest bit of intensity creeping in the background to herald the Void's arrival, covered by the epic trumpet symbolizing Sentry's godlike imagery, and rock and roll for Prime's rude and crude attitude. But when the distorted and glitchy vibe takes full effect, it goes all hard on the choirs too, and it makes it clear that someone entered the server and we're not talking about a Minecraft YouTuber. Then 1 minute later the heroic trumpets return in full form, as if fighting off the dreaded darkness caused by the Void in musical form too, and Prime wraps it all up with some classic triumphant trumpets at the end. It probably doesn't work as a standalone song to listen to, like say Soul Outsider or Infernal Engine, but it accompanies the fight so amazingly that it doesn't matter. As far as the narrative themes go, I had to sit on this one for a surprisingly long while, but I think I got it. The narrative themes for Sentry vs Superboy Prime are integration versus separation, in one of those rare instances where the latter is more positive than the former, like, say, ending an abusive relationship. Sentry as a character always included multiple lives in one: Bob the addict, Sentry the superhero, and Void the embodiment of darkness. All three coexisting clearly led to nothing positive for Bob. I mean, the Void literally wants to turn everybody, everywhere, and every mind into the same infinite pit of darkness is made of. That can't be good for your mind. Prime witnessed comics branching off from goofy to silly and dark and gritty, himself going from superhero to mass murder, and his power going from quote-unquote normal Kryptonian strength to something that defies the very medium he's in, on top of just being aware of his status as a comic book character in general. And in this battle, he separates Bob from both Sentry and Void by only retconning the latter two, leaving Bob with a life devoid of superhero trauma. With Sentry being a hero that wants to be erased after falling to despair, now meeting Prime who can erase people after falling out of despair, plus being motivated to bring that kind of happy ending to others, it turns out that Bob's personal crisis was never gonna be infinite. Someone better pick up the phone because I called it! No, really. I love how I predicted the ending of a DC Dead Battle twice now. I'm honestly vastly happier to nail the prediction for the animation side of things than the power scaling side of things. I consider myself more of a student of storytelling and animation first and power scaling second, not gonna lie. And you know, as a Dead Battle review channel, sometimes I get my hot takes, unpopular opinions and so on. But when it comes to the notion of this being one of the best endings in Dead Battle history, yeah, I'm fully with the crowd on this one. I love how the Void's whole shtick kinda ends up confirming his demise, because like, think about it. Instead of just keeping on spreading across all realities undisturbed, he just had to go after the infinitely fast Prime just to torture him some more. He just couldn't help himself, because he's pure evil. So he tapped into his button so much that he did the exact opposite of demotivating Prime. It's a small but notable character trait, but it does so much to convey the Void as this pure force of sadistic darkness entirely devoid of humanity, or in this case, common sense. Not saying that they could have unironically killed Prime if he stopped playing with his food, I mean, that battle sure doesn't seem to think that way, but still, it's a subtle character moment. The one scene of Void just casually regenerating from a fucking super flare, payback from earlier I guess, as he keeps on holding Prime with more and more infinite tendrils, and the latter's struggle being conveyed to both the visual and vocal department by Sean Chiplock, my god, this scene goes hard. I really love the subtle transition between Void and Merge Sentry, even with a little bit of the former popping up there at the end. Instead of sadistically pessimistic, Merge Sentry comes off as resigned, defeated, in a Darth Vader sort of way. Like, you know you are facing an authentic despair believer when he doesn't even care about his own well-being, so you know the smiling friend's trick wouldn't work on him. Apparently I'm one of the few Dead Battle reactors that interpreted this shot as Merge Sentry trying to void the audience too, since you know he's looking straight at us. But whether intended or not, I love that Sentry does more subtle fourth wall breaks compared to Prime. And I do find it pretty funny that this heart-to-heart moment in a pocket dimension is exactly what I felt was missing in Yuji vs Denji, only for that kind of scene to pop up in a comic book episode right after it. I don't know. The vulgar brawler coming down after being caught in the pocket dimension of the more somber combatant, the tragic death, talking of happy endings, you know, it feels something out of the DNA of what we thought Yuji vs Denji was going to be, but instead they put it there, one episode late. I don't have any strong opinions on that, but it's just really funny. Speaking of previous episodes, apparently this is the 4th episode in the show history where neither combatant truly dies, according to the wiki. And similar to Courage vs Scooby sacrificing Eustace, they managed to circumvent the Death Battle rule by having Prime specifically kill only Void and Sentry, leaving Bob to live happily ever after with his normal wife. That's super clever and I love that. Much like how I love this whole bit, really. Honestly, just give it a few weeks more of work away to add more shading, and this could look like something straight out of My Adventures with Superman. and that's high praise because I love the adorable hairstyle that show has. And the vocal performance of Bob, my god. He just sounds like someone who desperately needed to be freed or something, all in one line. Bravo to every single person behind this segment, honestly. Which, fun fact, is actually a callback to how the original Sentry miniseries started and ended, albeit in a more optimistic lens. Meanwhile, Prime ending up unarmed on Earth Prime after kicking some meta-contextual ass is definitely a reference to when he did that in Dark Knight's Metal. Bit narcissistic to have Sentry pose like your own comic, Prime, but hey, in this guy's mind is always Prime time. And yet, believe it or not, what I think truly makes Prime earn the ass he's working on his chest isn't just to give Bob a happy ending with his wife, but doing so specifically after the Void tried to torture him by mentioning his girlfriend. Prime basically took that in, got angry, and still said, you know what, I'm gonna give you the happiness I never got to have with my girlfriend. It's a small but notable act of defiant kindness, selflessness and compassion that I think defines most version of Superman, so I think it's amazing for Prime to tap into that kind of energy to end the fight. I'm still not gonna call you Clark though, I'm sorry, you're always gonna be Prime in my eyes. But the Shura Superboy Amazon Prime. So the boss fight breakdown. Long story short, me and Dead Bellow reached fundamentally different conclusions about how Sentry's relationship with retcons, and that's fine, I can take the L. I'm just surprised at how much my sources were wrong on this. I guess I read very generous interpretations. Or Dead Bellow downplayed it, I don't know, I'm just throwing my hands in the air. I no longer care about this debate now. What I do have more difficulty accepting, however, is giving Prime both the stats and X advantage, because not only the breakdown and animation, by all intents and purposes portray them so close that a retcon punch was the only tiebreaker, you know, much like the anti-Toon Force gun or Bruce Banner in previous episodes, but they themselves admit they are pretty much physically even and had to resort to fine print details about Molecule Man, which feels a bit anti-fitsy, but hey, this might as well be me being just salty or something. I do appreciate them admitting that Sentry is so broken that even Prime might need multiple retcon punches to fully do the job, which is reflected in the animation too. So you know what, I'll take that olive branch. And Prime popping up on screen still to whine about what's basically a stomp matchup for him, according to that Bella list, is, for lack of a better term, obnoxiously in character. I guess I like them calling out the old pity boy category accusations they've been getting lately, even though I'd say it's not that bad. If I did a breakdown, I personally would have had the physical tie-in stats, Sentry winning intelligence or versatility, Prime winning powers, and then I guess Prime winning retcon ability. Yeah, I probably put on screen a version of what I said that makes sense. I just think Sentry winning 1.5 tech stats works better than 1. So yeah, the first 11 out of 10 I put on an episode in a while. I think it went above and beyond to be amazing, and yeah, I think I listed all the reasons why. It's easily the best Marvel vs. DC episode to an embarrassing degree, and yeah, by the time you're watching this, either Aang vs. Traveler just dropped or is about to drop. I have no idea what they're gonna do to make this episode special, but I'm definitely curious because this debate is not interesting at all. There's a reason why I skipped the prediction video there. But yeah, until then, doing lots of other the same. Hulk or Krypton, hoping I made your day slightly better.